Hey everybody! In this video we'll look at this groundbreaking electric GT category announced by the FIA a little while ago. We'll look at things like power consumption, how many laps can you do in a stint, how long will your pit stop take, how many stops will you have to do in an endurance race, and how are you going to charge it up with a generator or with solar panels. Just have a sort of an overall look at how will this all work, will it work at all, is it practical? Some questions, groundbreaking. Well, let's see what the numbers say. For that we need a spreadsheet. You can see I'm happy, so let's dive almost straight into the spreadsheet. But before that, of course, a few notes on electric racing. Nothing against the idea of electric power for a racing car. It's all good and well. There are issues, but I don't really care if the power comes from angel farts or electric motors or gas motor. Well, noise perhaps has a slight preference, but it's also smelly and noisy. I don't care. As long as it goes fast, it's cool, and goes sideways, I'm fine with it. So nothing against electricity, just there are some limitations, and I think people can be a little bit too optimistic about the whole situation. And that's why this video will actually look at the numbers. So here we go into the spreadsheet. And despite Einstein being here, mistakes can be made and probably have been made. So nothing I say is 100% definitive. If you spot something, correct me in the comments. I'm happy to acknowledge failures because I'm very good at making failures. So just want to say that. Notice how clever I am in disguising some of the parts of the spreadsheet we're not allowed to see yet. Some of the numbers, the specs, you can read them on the FIA site. We have a couple of values here. Around 430 kilowatts of power, which is 577 horsepower. We can charge at a rate of 700 kilowatts regen as well for braking. That's cool. Battery size 87 kilowatt hours, and I'm going to assume we can just charge the thing to 100% at this maximum charge rate. In reality, I wonder if that's possible. You can never probably charge it right to 100% at this rate, but I'm going to be as positive as I can, optimistic for the numbers. And we're going to use some things here. And later we'll do some numbers with a full grid, because having one electric car doesn't work, so we can play with the number of cars on the grid. What are we doing? Well, let's take a lap at Spa, and let's assume it will do around 2 minutes 20, so 140 seconds. Full power, so this is 80% of the power is used, so 430 is our maximum power, and I'm gonna assume that when we're not braking, so when we're on the power, we're gonna use 80%, and we're gonna spend 10 seconds in full regen, and that's a little, how much time do you spend on the brakes? A little more, but can you get the full regen? I think 10 seconds of 700 kilowatts regen is probably fair, but we can play with the numbers. That gives us some numbers here. Oh, there's a kitty anyway. That means of the 140 seconds we spent per lap, let's say we use the power 130 seconds, and during that time we have 80%, so that's 344 kilowatts of power in use, and convert that to hours, we get 12.4 kilowatt hours. Regen, 10 seconds, the remaining part, at 700 kilowatt gives us 1.9. So here comes the number. We can do 10.5 kilowatt hours we need for a lap, and that makes our maximum stint 8 laps. And of course, if we say, well, Niels, your regen second longer and full power you're only at 75. See, now we do 9 laps, so it will change a little, all right? But this is the beauty of the spreadsheet, obviously. So that gives you some idea. Not a very long stint, but okay. Now let's do a pit stop, and let me just drag my sleeping kitty. That means if we are charging full capacity, 87 kilowatt hours, sorry, we take 7 minutes and 27 seconds to do a stop, and the stint is 18 minutes 40 seconds. So we're driving 18 minutes 40 seconds 70% of the time, and we're stopped around 30% of the time. So that's a big issue, I think, because this, it's going to be a lot of action in the pits. That's one of the issues with electric racing is that the capacity of the battery is limited because it's already very heavy, and these GT cars will be heavier already. And you know, that's the thing. You can make the battery twice as big, you can do more laps, but then the car will be a couple 100 kilos heavier. It won't do the lap time, it will eat its tires, etc. So the battery capacity, it being so heavy compared to fuel, is what's limiting here. And well, yeah, charging at 700 kilowatts is huge, but it still takes 7.5 minutes. So yeah, the time spent in the pits versus the time out on the track doesn't look great. But now let's look at an entire race. So here we have a race. Well, let's do a 6-hour race, which is sort of typical endurance. We managed to do 110 laps because, well, we spent a lot of the time in the pits. We spent 4 hours 17 minutes on the track racing and 1 hour and 42, well, effectively 43 minutes in the pits. So that gives you an idea of the 30% time spent in the pits versus 70% out on the track. That's, you know, that's one F1 race. For a 6-hour endurance race, you spend the time that it takes one F1 race to happen in the pits, which is just quite long. And you have to do 14 stops. So that's quite a bit, over 2 stops an hour. So if you do a 24-hour race, Spa 24, great race of course in GT, you spend 17 hours on track and almost 7 hours in the pits, and you have to do 56 stops. That's just quite a lot, you know. That's just the realism that you have to take in mind, and that's what the problem of storing electricity in batteries gives you, a lot of time spent in the pits. So with these numbers in mind, then all right, okay, where does the magic juice come from when you plug in your GT car into the wall? Now I can speak from some experience that I'm pretty sure in Spa, if you put in each team during the lunch break plugs in the toaster, the whole of Belgium will be out of power. So you cannot just plug it in the wall. You need stuff for it, right? So 2 options we'll look at. First is diesel generators, because they can generate the power and not kill Belgium. And we also look at solar panels, if you can do it with that. So first option, using a diesel generator. What am I talking about here? Well, we're talking the big unit. This is 1,000 kilowatt. So remember, we can charge at 700, but this has a bit more capacity. Yeah, it's probably reasonable to use one of these if you want to plug your car straight into a generator like that. It will also mean, you see, this is not insubstantial. You almost pretty much need one of these generators for one car, because if you can charge at 700, it's 70% of the capacity already. So this is the big unit. We have a spec sheet because we enjoy that. Yada yada yada. We have some info here. It's very interesting. So diesel, it's a V12. So at least, you know, you can complain with electric racing, there's no V12s. Actually, if you use generators, you have plenty of V12s in the pit lane. It's a diesel, but hey, still a V12. And it's a 37 liter V12. That's significant. Also here we find some information. What we care about is, at least what I care about, fuel use, liters per hour. So with various loads we can find the fuel use, and we know of course to get 700 kilowatts we need 70% use. So we can find the diesel use that we need. Interestingly though, look at specs here. With a 950 liter tank, the thing weighs 11,600 kilos, and then you need if we are at Spa, we need a weather protected enclosure. So you're looking at 14,000 kilos for one generator that you need. If everybody makes a pit stop, each car needs its own generator. So you need 10 times, okay, it's a bit silly, but hey, it's a huge thing and you do need it because 700 kilowatt charging, saying, oh yeah, that's real quick. Yeah, but your wall socket doesn't do that. You need very, very serious equipment for it. So serious, in fact, that, what is the size actually? The whole unit on its own is like 5 by 2.5 by 3.5 meters. It's very large indeed. And the bigger enclosures are, wow, it's huge. So, but this is seems like a modern proper generator. So we've put those specs here, and using some maps we can look up for a 24-hour race. In this case, let's look at the 24-hour race because we still have that. We need to turn on the generator 6.9 hours because that's the time we spent in the pits that we're actually charging. And we use 700 kilowatts, which is 70% of the rated power. And we do a bit of a smooth lookup. We find that we need 234 liters per hour to run that generator. And if you know you stop for 6.9 hours, you can then calculate for one car to run a 24-hour race. An electric car needs 1605 liters of diesel to power the generator. And of course, if we have a 25-car grid, and who knows, GT cars, grids are quite large. Perhaps this is like 60% of the grid on electricity. 40,116 liters to do the generators. And that weight, to put that into perspective, like if it's 13,500 kilo for one generator, that's 10 GT cars. And the generators for the full grid of 25 cars, if each car has its own generator, which, otherwise you have to really shuffle when you can do the pit stops. It's no longer really a race when you have to wait in line to get charged. 337,500 kilos. And you have just to think about the logistics of that, getting, just buying all that generator is going to be very expensive, or renting, shipping them all over to the race. It's incredibly stupid, of course. But diesel, that's like coal burning, fossil. We don't do that. We do solar panels. So the final example to see if we can generate the power using solar panels. For that, I have to shuffle the kitty and my face. Weird thing to say, but hey. In order to get some idea of how much solar is there, here is a nice sort of graph of the solar irradiation, which is effectively the energy that comes from the sun. Not from the daughter, but from the sun. As we all know, the suns have energy. Or no, wait, the sun. Yeah, I know, English. Hard, right? For each square meter for 1 year in Europe. So, of course, if you go with like Italy, the values are higher. It's like 1800 kilowatts per square meter per year. And if you go with the Netherlands here, it's a bit worse. It's like 1100. Belgium is about the same. This is a number that depends, of course, on the season, but it's an average. So let's, we can be generous, but we have a rough idea on average. And, if we are in Belgium, it tends to be a bit cloudy, even in summer. It's not always great. So this gives us a reasonable assumption. But that's per square meter per year. And we have to do a bit of number crunching in order to get to some real values. Plus, this is not the solar power you can generate. This is just that comes from the sun, ready for you to turn into electricity. Unless I've made a mistake, of course. What we need, this is per car, these numbers, is for this race. Well, you can calculate the time it's on track. The power is needed because we know that for each lap it's 10.5 kilowatt hours, and we know the number of laps. And then we get, this is the power use we need to get from the solar panels to do the entire 24-hour race. And I've used the solar irradiation here of 1500, which is this line, 1500. You see, it's considerably more than we actually get in Belgium and the Netherlands. So this is on the optimistic side. It will be more towards spring, summer than winter, but it's hard to tell. But it's something like that. Perhaps a great day. I don't really know exactly because these bands are quite small. I don't really know, but I'll look a few more numbers up, right? But let's use 1500, which is not negative, right? It's fairly optimistic. With this number being per square meter per year, well, that is a lot less per hour, of course, as there is a lot of hours in a year. And then we know the length of our race, 24 hours. And we know that during that race we can get 4.11 kilowatt hours per square meter per duration of the race. That's the energy we can generate. But the panels, the solar panels, are of course not 100% efficient of turning that solar heat into energy. And here's the 25% number. Some of the better LG panels here, they talk about 22%, up to 22% efficiency. The warranty is bigger than the efficiency, but still about 15 to 20% average, 22. So, you know, picking 25%, that's some very, very good solar panels. And then we know how much we generate per square meter for the race duration. With these numbers, with everything we've entered here, and yes, we can adjust this, but it's fairly silly, and that's just what I mean to show that, yeah, electric sounds great, but it still has to come from somewhere. We're looking at 4,500 square meters of solar panel needed for one car. And this is, of course, a little optimistic even. I'm assuming that there is battery storage. So this is not instantaneous. It cannot come instantaneous from the panels. It has to slowly charge up the battery when your car is draining the battery on the track. These panels will always be putting their maximum energy into a battery. So it makes some assumptions, but it will be a lot more if we did it differently. So looking at that way, 4,500 square meters, or looking at some UK data here, 391 parking spaces, or over half a football field. And for the entire grid, we are looking at 112,431 square meters, or 10,000 parking spaces, or 16 football fields worth of solar panels. And you put them there a couple hours, a day or so in front to charge the batteries. And there's a lot of infrastructure, of course, needed. But conclusion time then, right? Why do I make this video? Electricity is being sort of marketed as the green and it's better for the environment, but it's not magic. The energy needed to move a racing car, accelerate it, brake it, turn it, accelerate it again, push it into the wind. You just need a lot of energy, and it doesn't matter if it's nuclear, if it's coal, if it's angel farts, if it's magic pixies, if it's snake oil. It needs a certain amount of energy, and no matter where it comes from, it's a lot. So you can get it from petrol, which is very, very efficient. It's actually really, really impressive. These days, battery technology is a lot more impressive than it was 50 years ago, but it's still not impressive compared to the energy density of fuel. So you need either a very big battery, which is heavy, which is a problem for racing cars. You want to go quick and weight is slow. We all know that because Colin Chapman told us. So that's the downside. That means you have to do quite a lot of pit stops, 56 stops in this 24-hour race in this scenario. And I can play with the numbers, and it might be 50 stops or 45 stops, but it's a lot. It means you're going to be standing still a lot of the time, which is not exciting. So those are some issues. But I think the biggest issue is that power you need, regardless of, just moving an object around, accelerating it around, takes power. And it has to come from somewhere. And it cannot realistically come from solar panels, really. And the infrastructure needed to, if you have like the whole country on solar panels, the thickness of the wires you have to run to the track to charge 25 cars at 700 kilowatts will be significant, right? And the area needed, 16 football fields, you cannot really bring that with you on a racing series. And can you expect 16 football fields worth of solar panels on each racetrack, around each racetrack to charge the cars up? No, you cannot really do that. Diesel generators, well, that's kind of stupid-ish because you've moved the V12 from the racing car to the generator, right? You're still burning fossil fuel. And the generators can be a little bit more efficient purely from the internal combustion engine point of view than the racing engines probably. Diesel can probably be 40-45% perhaps. Ooh, that's quite high, but who knows. And most racing engines that are not F1 engines are 35, 30. So yes, the generator will be more efficient, but the thing we haven't mentioned here, or we sort of neglected here, is efficiency. So yes, the diesel engine will be more efficient than the race engine, but it has to convert its power into electricity. You have to use that to charge the car up, and there will be some percentages lost, and by the end I don't think you will use more fuel in the car if you would have a V12 in the car versus a V12 in the generator. Let's say they're equal. I actually think probably the generators might even be worse. And of course, then the whole thing, yes, you need the same amount of fuel. Let's equalize that than the racing cars would. But now you have a chunky battery in a racing car that has to be, resourced. You have to mine those things and transport them. You need huge 13,500 kilo generators to lug around you, which is all really, 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 really inefficient. So that's the thing, and that's why it's very easy if you look at these numbers, and I can be more generous, but there is a limit, and if I am twice as generous, it's still fairly stupid. Racing is not green, racing is not efficient. You shouldn't really do electric racing as efficient. Sure, the technology might develop for road cars, for example. There's something to be said for that, but actually the racing on the track does not make that a green thing by itself. So that's, I think, what I was about to say. And as always, when there are spreadsheet, I see I've made that really funny mistake with my error calculation. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. Anyway, mistakes possible. Correct me in the comments, of course. I'm only looking at this, and energy things, even though it's not complicated math, can be a little bit confusing. So correct my mistakes in the comments before throwing fruit. Let's do that after. And thanks for watching, and see you guys later. Bye bye.